Okay. Hi, Jen. How are you?
Hi, Douglas. I'm well. How are you?
Doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So, right off the bat, I see on your bio it says you now live in a fishing boat in Boston Harbor. Is that where you are right now?
I'm not. I came onto land to do to interview with you, just because sometimes on the boat our cell service and our internet is not fantastic all the time, so you can't completely count on it. Along with everything else, the heating, the plumbing, the electric.
Well, that's real interesting. I mean, I'm from Boston originally. I moved away in 2005, but I grew up in the Boston area. And I'm just trying to think where one would where are you? I mean, is your
So we are in Charlestown.
oh, okay.
So yeah, so we're in Charlestown. So right by the garden.
Okay, near the Tobin Bridge.
Yeah, yeah, right
Yeah.
by the Tobin's right behind us.
Okay.
So
All right. I
yeah,
know the area. Yeah, definitely. Okay, well that must be interesting. Cold in the winter, wouldn't it be?
yeah, it's really cold in the winter. So we bubble. We put ourselves in like a plastic bubble. But yes, there's been times where I've woken up and kind of stretched in bed and then cracked ice at the bottom of our bunk. So
Wow.
yeah, it's
Okay.
cold
So, but you're in that boat year round. Yeah.
year round. Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic way to live, especially if you like living small, which we do. Like you have like three forks and three knives, and all your space is really important, so nothing goes to waste. And in fact, I keep my underwear in the crock pot, when we're not using the crock pot.
Or when you're not using your underwear, I should say. Yeah.
Well, it's my clean underwear,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. How big is the boat?
It's small. It's 36 feet, so it's an Egg Harbor. It was in 1979 Egg Harbor. It was made in Jersey, in Egg Harbor, New Jersey. So it's a beautiful little fishing boat.
Is it wooden?
The inside is all teak, but the outside is not. Wooden boats are really, really hard to upkeep, and the fiberglass is, yeah, it's a lot easier to upkeep.
Fiberglass boats would be better insulated for the cold, wouldn't they be?
Yeah, they're not so insulated. I mean, some of them are, some models are, but our little boat is not really made for a Boston winter. We really have to, when you live on a boat, you really start to, you understand what wool is, 100% wool, and what that means to your life.
So you don't
It's
have
really
any
important.
desire to uh, pull anchor and go to Florida or somewhere in the winter where it's a little.
No, my husband's a teacher in Boston, so we need to be there for the winter. And we do pull anchor and go out, and, we do go out into the ocean and play and hang out. But yeah, but we always come back.
Well, it sounds very interesting, and best of luck with that.
Yeah,
You
thanks, Douglas. We
you
love it.
you have a book out, and I love the title. It's called Shift Happens. I got to say that carefully. The history of labor in the United States. Is this your first published book, or have you done other books?
No, this is my ninth, but it is my first nonfiction. So previously, I've written only fiction. So this was my first nonfiction.
So this is literally just a historical text of labor in America.
It really is. So what I try to do for young people and for anybody in the working class who's interested in their history is I really try to I start the book with Christopher Columbus arriving in the Bahamas. And then I end the history with the United Auto Workers Stand Up campaign in 2023. So it's a pretty broad history of the working class people in America. And what I've really tried to do is I tried to tell the history of the United States just through the eyes of working class people. And so what that history looked like, not to founding fathers, not to political leaders, or presidents, but through people who got up every day and worked for a living through those, through our history.
Okay, well, if you started all the way back with Columbus, then you went through the slavery period and you went through all of that as part of the category of labor, right?
Absolutely. So indentured servants
Indentured
and,
servants.
the
Yeah.
labor movement really starts, at about like 1827 or whatever they decide. That's when the modern labor or the modern labor movement actually begins in the US. But I started right away because I'm really trying to tell the story of working people and also, the struggle to begin the organization and the struggle to, become unions and figure out how to do that.
What was the first official labor union in the United States?
Gosh, it was the Philadelphia cordwainers. So they were the first to unionize. They have such an interesting story because cordwainers are shoemakers. So back in the day, you had to have a lot of skills to make shoes. And so they have they have the first labor union. They also have one of the first strikes. And it kind of resonates today because it's a fight between it kind of ends up between skilled workers and unskilled workers. And I'm using unskilled, it's a historical term. I believe every job, you have to have skill for every job. But it's where we first begin to learn, or it first becomes clear that you really need solidarity to win against corporations and business when you're working class. Because the cordwainers went on strike, but they didn't allow their apprentices to join their union. So when they went on strike, the owners just went to the apprentices and said, "Listen, we'll pay you a tiny bit more, not as much as we're paying those guys, but how about you just start making the shoes?" So yeah, production was a little bit slower for a bit, but the owners saved money because they were paying these guys less. And of course, the cordwainers were now out of a job. So it's a really interesting story and a great example to say, hey, we need to be in these unions together. We need to stick together.
I watched a couple of documentaries, I think on the History Channel, and they were talking about the steel. Carnegie Steel was one of them, and coal miners was another one. And the thing that just made my jaw drop was the fact that these people were paid not in money, but in tokens that they could only use in the stores that the company owned to buy their food and to buy their. So, I mean, you want to talk about being indentured slaves. You absolutely had everything right down to your clothes.
Yes, and I mean these were called company towns. They were huge because, of course, and I wouldn't call them slaves. I will make that distinction because being an indentured servant or being inside of these company towns was awful. But we really can't compare it to really can't compare it to slavery. But it was an awful existence, Douglas. It was you were basically owned by the business because you didn't get any cash, and so you went to their stores to buy things. Everything in the town was owned by them, including the schools. So your children were being educated by your boss, and the church, the whoever was there, the minister, the priest, that church was also owned, and so that pulpit was also owned. And they across the board had no town halls, so you were never allowed to gather any place but within either church or your children could gather in the school, or you could gather in, at the workplace, but you couldn't even gather there because they were in control of that. And many of these places refused any kind of liquor to enter. Pullman, the Pullman factory town was very famous for that. Now, Pullman himself could drink, and the owners, of course, had liquor in their homes and alcohol in their homes, but there was none allowed within the confines of the company town. They were really, really controlled.
I heard Henry Ford did something similar to that, where he would go around visiting people's homes of people that worked for him.
Yes.
To make sure their morality was up to snuff or something like that.
Oh, definitely. He was like, and he's, of course, Henry Ford is famous for saying things like, forget, unions are horrible. What happened to the independent man? But of course, no one who worked for Ford was independent of Ford. He got very deep into your life. So first, he got very deep into the immigrant population that he employed, so much so that he would have a ceremony to welcome them. So they had to go through a training period And then at the end of and take English classes and things like that. And at the end, he would say they had to bring in their costume, and that they would, fold it and put it away. And what that meant was they had to bring in clothes that they used to wear in their country and hand them in. But of course, he called them costumes. And then later, when he found that, of course, he underpaid, you had no say in your job. And so when those immigrants began to organize, he then went into the Black community and went into the churches. And literally, they had to, like, the ministers wrote who was in church, who wasn't. Again, there was no alcohol. All his workers had to attend church every single Sunday. And of course, Henry Ford did not have to, but all his workers did.
Are any of the big tech companies in this country now unionized?
They are on their way. Apple employees are working very hard. And of course, Apple is working very hard to keep that from happening. So yes, so the tech companies are on their way. I think with, AI is, changing things in that I think that white collar workers, or the more privileged workers in our society are seeing, like, unions always kind of were like a blue collar idea, although that's not really true, but that's what most people think of when they think of unions. But of course, you have the Screen Actors Guild and and they're all coming together, including the tech companies, because AI is out there, and this is not a machine that can. Or it's not, something that, a car manufacturing. This AI is coming after these white collar, more technical jobs.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of the stipulations in the writer's strike and the actor's strike
Right.
as well,
Yes.
was AI. And I don't know what became of that provision, if they did anything at all. But I know
It's still in there.
Yeah.
It's still in there. And I think what it comes down to, Douglas, is that, things are always changing, and new innovations are always going on. They have been since the Industrial Revolution, even before that. And as these innovations come, what ends up happening in working class America is we go from skilled workers to de-skilled. We get de-skilled by this. And somebody could say, well, then new jobs are formed, which is true. But in this process of going from skilled to unskilled, workers suffer, loss of their homes and loss of their jobs and loss of their security, and so many losses. And it doesn't have to be that way. We could make these transitions that are always happening in our society, we could make them a lot smoother by organizing, unionizing, and creating laws to support working people through these changes.
We've got just about a minute and a half. I wanted to ask you, did you write this book specifically for a target audience, or is it just for anybody?
I wrote it for young people, but of course it's for anyone who wants to know the story of the working class. I love writing for young adults. They're just my people, and I love how hopeful and honest they are. And so I wanted to give them a hopeful, honest book. Most young people are working class people, and they will enter the workforce. And so I wanted to give them their history. It's a great history. It's a storied history, the history of working class people. And so, but of course, anyone can read it, Douglas. And I think the good thing about it is that I really contextualize everything, and I don't assume anybody knows anything. I just go ahead, start from A and go to Z.
Okay. The book is out. Has it been released?
It's being released today.
Today? Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, the last question, we do have to wind this down. The last question is, do you have a website that you want to give out?
Sure. So you can find me at jalbertmann.com. And if you're following me on social media, I'm on everything, but I'm probably most active on Instagram. So at jalbertmann on Instagram. And if you're going to buy Shift Happens, I would say go to your local your independent bookstore, or go to your public library. That is an institution that working class folks thought up. So go to your local library and take me out there.
Okay. Well, Jen, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was nice talking to you. Nice meeting you. Best of luck with the book launch.
Thank you so much for having me, Douglas. I really enjoyed myself.